Have you ever been asked to make a sign that's bigger than your CNC machine can carve? Let's talk about how to tackle this problem using the tiling feature found in Vectric software. So I recently had a client ask me to make him a sign that's 3 foot by 5 foot. And that is awesome. I'm excited to make the sign, just a little apprehensive because my Onefinity CNC machine only cuts, 4 foot by 2.5 feet. But fortunately, Vectric has a tiling feature that allows you to take your workpiece and slide it up and down the y-axis or across the x-axis, or even to make small sections that you can put together later. So I'm going to show you how I used that feature to make this sign step by step. Okay, so here we are in the Vectric software. We're in Vcarve Pro, and I've already taken my client's logo and I've already used bitmap tracing and created it. It's a very simple logo, won't be too hard to cut, but I saved it as a template. If you've never used a template, let me show you how you load a template here. All right, so you're gonna go right up to the corner here and we're gonna do a new file from template. Click on that. And this one I saved as Wooler Sign Template. You can see here it says Vectric CRV template file, right? So we know this is the right one. And we're gonna open it, give it a second, it'll populate here. And the first thing it does is it brings up the job setup. And everything is right except for my board thickness. We're just gonna change that to 1 inch. Okay. Now, material surface, we know right where that is. Now, this is important. The XY datum right here, this needs to be in the lower corner. It's just going to make it a lot easier for alignment. I mean, while you're doing your design, it can be in the center, but when we're setting up to do the tiling toolpath, it needs to be in this corner because that's where we're going to measure from. And so go ahead and hit OK. It's going to tell me it's changing the cut depth. I know. Okay, so let's start off by talking about what tiling is and how it works. So we're going to go from the drawing tab up here and we're going to click and we're going to go over to the toolpath side. And right here is the tile toolpath. So let's click on that. All right, so I know that this board is 5 feet or 60 inches. So I divided that by 3. So each section that I cut is going to be a 20-inch section sliding through on the y-axis. So right here you can see we have tile toolpath. We're going to check that box. Now you can see there are 3 options. You can do individual tiles and cut each one and put them together later. You could do feed through on the x-axis where it would go side to side on your machine, or you can feed through on the y-axis, which is what we're going to do here, and this would slide your project through in this direction on the y-axis. And I know that each of them are going to be 20 inches sections, so I just put 20 inch for each section. I want them to overlap by 1/4 of an inch. So why do you want them to overlap 1/4 of an inch? Because if you're using a V-bit and I'm cutting this A right here and it comes up to this yellow line, it would just stop. Well, the same thing would happen on the other side. It would come up to that yellow line and just stop. But when you're using a V-bit, it'll leave a little bump. So you want it to go past just a little bit so that 1/4 of an inch finishes up that cut. So you want it to overlap just a little bit. All right, and so you can see here, there are 3 tiles. So we're showing highlighted as tile 3. And you can drop down here to highlight the different tiles. There's tile 2 and there's tile 1. So this is the first tile we're going to cut. So there needs to be a hole right here that lines up with the spoil board. So that way I can keep it in line. And I know when I take section 2, and I slide this down into section 1 to be cut, I'm going to have a hole right here that will allow that peg to fall into the spoil board and align itself straight across. And of course I'll have something on this side to keep everything straight, but I need to have a hole here. And same thing, when tile 3 gets slid down into the tile 1's position, when we slide this all the way down, there needs to be a little peg or a hole here to drop into that spot so I know exactly where to mark. Now on this project, I'm going to drill holes directly into my project because it's going to be painted, and then I'll just leave the dowels in, and they can paint right over them. A lot of times you'd get your project wider and put holes on the outside and cut them off later, but I'm not bothering with that right now. Okay, so let's hide this tile manager, and we're going to go back up here and switch over to the drawing side. Now, how are we going to align those holes? Let me show you how we do that. I don't know if you've done this before, but if you go up into this ruler up here and you right click and hold it, you can drag down and it brings a guideline. So when I bring this all the way down to this point, it's showing me 0. I decided that I want my hole to be 1 inch up from the 0 mark. Okay, so I'm going to have a hole 1 inch up from the bottom. But I need all the holes to line up from the edge too. So I'm going to go to the right side here. I'm going to click and hold and drag over another guideline, and I'm going to put it at 35. There we go. So I have it at 35 now. So I know that I need a hole right here where this cross section is, right here. Now I'm using 1/2 inch dowel, so I know the 1/2 inch dowel won't be a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to draw a circle. I have it set up for a 1/2 inch circle. I'm going to come right down. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to come right in here and make a circle. So you can see there, I have a 1/2 inch dowel drill hole there. It'll go through this board and into my spoil board for a peg, a dowel peg, to hold it in that position. However, we also need to have another one about exactly 20 inches up from here, because we need another hole there, so when I move the section down, that peg can drop into the hole in the spoil board here. So what I'll do is if I go over this guideline right here, go over to this guideline and I click on it, right click on it, it brings up the guide properties. And it shows you, oh yeah, your current position, that line is at 1 inch. Oh, thank you. We knew that. But we need to make another one that's 20 inches above. So relative to this line, we need another one that's 20 inches up. Okay? Actually, I'm going to make 2 of them because we have 2 sections. Just to make a point later. So what I did is that we're going to make 2 lines, and I'm going to put the position, each of them 20 inches apart. I'm going to do create new guides. So you can see it created a guide here and a guide here. So if we did everything right, if I click on this guideline, it should say it's at 21 inches because we were 1 inch up and then we went another 20 from there. So that makes 21. Okay. And if we did everything right, this should be at 41 inches. And this one's at 41 inches. So we did it right. Now we need to create another hole right here. All right, still set up for the 1/2 inch. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There's that one. Now, I'm not going to put one here. Why, you ask? Why would I? Because don't we need a hole there? We do need a hole there. But the problem is my machine doesn't cut up that high. So that hole will not be cut until the project is slid down on the machine. Well, when you slide this project down, guess where that hole is? This spot right here moves down to here, so we have to use this circle to create another peg hole for our project because it moved down. All right, so let me show you how we do that. Oh, by the way, the guidelines that are on here, if you ever want those to disappear, you can hit this right here. It turns them off. You can turn it back on. We'll turn it off for now, just so we don't get confused. Okay, so our next step is to figure out all the tool paths and how to tile this. Okay, now that we have the alignment spot set up. So we're going to go ahead and go back up here to tool paths. I'm going to move over out of the way here. All right, so our first step, we're going to take care of these guide holes. All right, so we're going to do this one and this one. We're going to cut these 2 at the same time. We're going to highlight both those circles. You can see they're both highlighted. And we are going to go to profile toolpath. And what we're going to do is we know that, and we're going to go through all this. So the first thing, we know the cut depth. We want that cut depth to go through my board, which is 1 inch, and we want it to go into the spoil board 1/2 inch, or however much you want. I know my bit will go down 1.5 inches, so that's my random number and why I chose it. You can certainly choose any number you want. Just make sure that your bit, whatever bit you're using to drill this hole, will go that far down without ruining your machine or your workpiece. So I'm going to do 1.5 inches, so it's 1.5. And all right, so the tool, I'm not going to use a 90-degree V-bit. That would not work. So let's select a new tool. I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/4 inch end mill. It's a bits and bits bit. And what we want to do, so on the circle, we don't want to cut on the line. We want to cut inside the line. We want it to clear out inside. So we're going to use conventional. I'm not going to do a separate pass. Now look, I'm using an end mill. Some of you are going to say, oh, but you're using a 1/4 inch end mill to drill a hole. It's not supposed to use a hole, and you're using a down cut. I mean, optimization would be to use an upcut bit here, clear out the chunks, but this is one cut, one quick hole. It's not going to start a fire on these two little holes. Yeah, it's going to be fine. It's not going to be a big deal. You'll see there won't be any smoke or anything when I cut my holes. It's just if you're making a bunch of holes, it can heat the bit up. It can heat up pieces quicker. Then you can get a fire. Making 1 or 2 holes, you're going to be fine. Okay, especially if you have a new sharp bit. Okay, so we want to be on the inside, clearing that out. We don't need a last. Yeah, we don't want to be on the line or inside or outside. We want to be inside the lines, clearing it out. All right, no last pass. Don't need tabs. We must do a ramp. All right, add ramps. We must do a spiral ramp because end mills aren't designed to just go and drill a hole. It just doesn't work very well. It's not what they're designed to do. So you kind of have to do a spiral to work your way through it. So use a spiral. And we are going to name this first drill hole 1/4 inch end mill. All right. Sorry if I look goofy typing that in. The microphone's in the way. All right, so we're going to hit calculate, and it's going to tell me, yeah, it's cutting through your workpiece and into your spoil board, and it is. Now be very careful. You're going through this and into your spoil board. You want to make sure that you're not sitting over some T-track there, or there isn't a, some people, I use the insets, the screw insets. Make sure there's none of those under there. Nothing that this is going to hit and bump into and ruin your spoil board or your bit, or worse, your workpiece. Hit OK. So now we're going to do preview all tool paths, and it should show us, yep, there's a hole here and a hole here. So it did a great job. Now we have to figure out, okay, we need a tool path for when we slide this down to drill a hole up here, because we don't want to drill both these holes again, because we're going to have this one aligning with the dowel that's in there. So we just need this hole only for when this piece slides down. So we need to do one more tool path with these circles. We're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight this one only. See that? Only that circle. This one is not highlighted. And we are going to go back to the same thing, the profile tool path. And we don't need it to be 1.5 inches because there's already a hole in our spoil board where this is going to be. It just needs to be 1 inch. And we're still going to cut on the inside. We absolutely have to add a ramp, and it has to be the spiral ramp. And we are going to call this second drill hole. And we're going to go ahead and hit calculate. And then we're going to do preview. We're going to reset, and we're just going to do the visible tool path. And you can see it just drilled that hole right there. It's perfect. Now let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the tiling tool paths, okay? We've got the holes set up and ready to go. The first thing we want to do is we want to cut out the Wooler photography. And we're just cutting on the inside of here. We're going to clear out everything inside of here. It's going to be painted, I think, white, and the outside will be blue. But in order to do that, we need to do a Vcarve toolpath for these. So I'm going to hit Vcarve. We want it to be a flat depth of 0.2 inches. I want the edges to be done with a 90-degree V-bit, which is set up here. And we're going to use a clearance tool. I'm going to use that same 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to clear everything out with that. We're just going to use offset to clear it out. We are going to ramp our plunges in. I usually do double the size of the clearance bit, so it's going to be, 1/2 inch, because it's 1/4 inch, so 1/2 inch ramp. It's going to slow things down a little bit, but it's going to save some wear and tear on your bit. Nothing else here really applies. And I'm going to go ahead and hit calculate. Now we're going to reset the preview, and then we're going to preview all tool paths. It'll show our little drill holes. Don't worry about those. What we want to do is see all the tool paths and make sure it all works out. And let's go ahead and give this a global fill. Perfect. It cut out everything just the way it's supposed to. we're good there. Now we got one more tool path to do here. So let's go back to the 2D. We need to do the border. So highlight the border. And that again is going to be the same 90-degree V-bit. It's just going to cut out that border. So let's go ahead and do the, and this one is going to be a profile tool path. Because if you do Vcarve, it's going to try and cut the whole inside out. We just want to cut on the line. So this allows us to cut on a line right here. All right, so my cut depth, we're going to keep it consistent with the letters. It's going to be 0.2. And we're going to select the new bit. And it's going to be the V bit, same one that the inside of the letters of Wooler are going to be used. And it should only take one pass to do it. We're cutting on the line. I don't need any tool pass, I don't need any of this. We don't need to ramp the V bit. V bit. All right. Let's reset preview, and let's just preview this tool path. You can see it made that border, beautiful border on there. So we're going to reset, and we're going to go ahead and just do preview all tool paths, see how it looks in the end. All right, so that's how it's going to look. Now, what we have to do is we have to clear this out. Let's reset the preview, and we're going to go to the tiling tab again. That's right here. We're going to go to the tiles. Let's click that tiling tool path on. Now we're going to go to tile 1 because I want you to see how this works. It's going to show us what it's going to cut. So we'll go right here to preview tool paths. Watch what happens when I do preview all tool paths. It shows everything that's going to be cut in tile 1. And then if I drop to tile 2 and I do preview all tool paths, it'll show everything that gets cut in tile 2. And for consistency's sake, we're going to do tile 3 and we're going to do preview all tool paths. And it shows us exactly what's going to happen in tile 3. Okay, so let's reset this and hide this. All right, so now that we've got that part done, we need to save the tool paths. So this is really important. This is probably the most important part of everything we've done so far. All right, so let's close this up, and we're going to go right here to save tool path. Right here in save tool path, it shows output tiled tool paths. Well, first thing we're going to save is going to be the drill holes, and those do not use the tiling feature. They are completely separate from those. So we're going to uncheck this, and yeah, it's going to give an error. It's fine. And what we want to do is we want to save the first drill hole, this one right here, and the second drill hole tool path as separate tool paths from the tiling. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save these tool paths, and we're going to put it in the G code here, the G code file, and we're going to call it Wooler Big Sign with Tiling. And I'm going to hit save. Now when I pop up the folder with that, you can see here it saved Wooler Big Sign with Tiling, first drill hole, Wooler Big Sign with Tiling, second drill hole, right? Now that we've done that, we need to save the other tool paths, okay? So we are going to go out, we're going to go, and these need to be tiled, so we're going to click on here, we're going to click on the output tiled tool path, and we're going to click those tool paths. Now, a lot of people like to group theirs together. When I'm tiling, I don't. I just want to do each one and make sure I do it correct. I'm pretty methodical. If you like grouping things, go for it, but I'm not going to do it. All right, so I'm going to check all of them that require tiling. Okay, all those require tiling. So, and notice it's just showing you section 3. That's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just because we left it that way. Now, we are going to go to Save Toolpath. And we're going to call it the same thing. It's the Wooler Big Sign with Tiling. And we're going to save it. All right, now let's take a look at what the G code looks like at this point. So you can see it saved it as tile 1 and the 3 tool paths to cut tile 1. Tile 2, it saved the 3 tool paths for tile 2, and the same thing for tile 3. So this is our clearance one. Let's open this a little more. So you can see this is our clearance with the end mill. Here's our 90 degree, And then here's our border with the 90 degree. Does the same thing for section 2 and section 3. Okay, notice it did not do that with our drill holes because those are being drilled separate. Okay, so I think that's everything we have to go through in the Vectric software. So now I'm going to take this G-code and show you how I used it to create the sign. So we're going to do an application of this in the workshop. If you're getting some value here, hit the like button. Or subscribe if you want to help me out. Otherwise, I'm going to meet you in the shop and I'm going to show you how I made this sign. So let's go. It all starts with quality preparation. I sand up to 220, put on 2 coats of shellac before installing the Aura mask. My client wants to paint this project himself, so I'm making it as easy as possible for him. The next step is to align the sign on my spoil board and to clamp it down. And luckily I have a 2-inch grid on my system, which makes aligning it on my spoil board much easier. Now I'm using a bits and bits 1/4 inch end mill, and we'll use this to drill the holes that we'll use to run a dowel through the workpiece and into the spoil board, and to help keep the alignment perfect. And you'll notice here that there will be little room for error because these are such a tight fit. Now that that's finished, we're going to load the clearance tool path for tile 1. Make sure you're picking T1, and I'm using the same 1/4 inch down cut end mill. Be sure to use a down cut end mill. It leaves a much cleaner cut along the edges of the Aura mask. And now we're going to switch over to the 90 degree V-bit and load the second tool path. And this is just going to do the edges and also the decorative line around the outside border. As you'll see later, you want to make sure your V-bit has nice sharp blades. After all the tool paths for tile 1 are finished, we're going to move on to tile 2. So pull up your workpiece and slide the second dowel into the first hole that held your first dowel. And be sure to line everything up again and clamp it down. Alright, next we need to drill a third guide hole through our workpiece, right where the second dowel used to be before we moved it down. That way when we move down to tile 3, we have a dowel ready to go to slide into that original spot. Now we're on to the second tile. We do everything we did for the first tile, only we use the paths marked T2. So first we do the clearance with the 1/4 inch end mill, then we'll switch over to the 90 degree V-bit and do the V-bit path as well as the decorative outside line. Just like we did when we slid down for tile 2, we'll slide down for tile 3. And if your sign is longer than your spoil board, make sure to add some support under the end. At this point, we're on our last tile, so no need to drill any more guide holes. We're going to go right to the T3 tool paths and cut them just like we did for tile 1 and tile 2. Lastly, I glue in the dowels and cut them off nice and flush. And as you can see now, this sign, it was made out of pine. And one thing I have to mention is make sure that you have a really sharp 90 degree V-bit blade. It really left some fraying, and I'm going to have a little bit of sanding to do. So when you're using these software woods, just make sure you have a sharp blade. But otherwise, here you have it. The sign is cut and ready for my client to paint. I hope you learned something here. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. Otherwise, even if you don't, I appreciate it, and go be great.